We are so grateful and excited to once again have Michelle on the podcast and then the channel, and to talk a little bit more about Lily and also this journey that has been after the loss of her daughter. And so, Michelle, welcome again. Thank you so much. If you have not had a chance to hear her story of Lily, please go check that out because it is there was a lot of crying. It was so touching and really beautiful. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So just a little bit of context. Can you tell us a little bit about Lily? Like how old was she when she was born? If was she stillborn? Yeah, like give us a little bit of information about her.
Yeah. So Lily Grace was stillborn at 27 weeks, about just over a year ago last week in September of 2021.
Yeah. So it really has been that is not that long ago, Michelle. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you being here. And I kind of actually a little curious. How did that? I know we kind of basically touched on it just very briefly about what that time looked like right after
Mhm.
when you guys got home because you got discharged basically in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and thankfully we were greeted by some kind gifts, some from your kind friends that were really just taking care of you. What were the few days, first few weeks looking like for you guys? Did you kind of just hunker down, or did you kinda get back into it? I mean, because both of you are busy, like, you are
Yeah.
both in busy jobs and busy lives, so tell me how that looked.
Yeah. So we definitely just like existed on the couch for a while. We were talking recently about like, what did we even do? Like, what passed the time in our days? And I couldn't tell you. I don't remember if we watched TV. I have no idea. I feel like we just laid on the couch and cried. And yeah, I was fortunate to be able to take, my job was very supportive. I could have taken as much time as I needed. Um, Chris, Chris's job was also very supportive. He chose to go back really quickly because he felt like getting back into a routine would be helpful to him. So
Yes.
Lily was born on a Wednesday and he went back to work the following Monday,
Okay.
which is, yeah, I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
I was not in a place to leave my house at all at that point. But yeah, he went back to work and then I went back to work very part-time at about 4 weeks and very full-time at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So also very quickly, which yeah, it felt, I made the decision and I felt empowered by my job to make the decision. That's right. But in hindsight, I can't believe I went back so quickly.
Yeah, that is fast. I mean, I think I went back around that time as well, but I was like, "I don't know if I was in the right state of
Yeah.
mind, honestly, to be there." And
Yeah.
thankfully, they were very kind and put me on things that I was not going to hurt anybody or, like I was doing administrative work. It was fine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then after that, like how did that grief start to change for you? Cuz it's really super intense those first few weeks, first few
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways, I feel like it stayed intense for a long time. And I don't know if it's because I was working so much and I had to compartmentalize so much, which I did to varying degrees of success. But that I would like, I feel like for a lot of the last year, not so much anymore finally, but for a lot of the last year, it was like go to work, try to do the best I can, stay afloat, and then come home and fall apart all over again. And I feel like the like the evenings and weekends have often felt just like those days did in the early days. I mean, I guess like it is quote unquote improvement or lightening in the sense that I was able to do it for not all day every day and like stay afloat. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's still, I think that something that surprised me is that now I'm a year out and it still hurts just as much, which in a way is kind of comforting because the pain feels like a
Yeah.
connection piece to Lily. Um, but it yeah, I know that I'm functioning better. And so I feel like on the outside it probably looks like I'm doing okay. But it still just hurts.
Yeah,
It just hurts.
it really does. Yeah, I don't think people realize that because they think, "Oh, yeah, you're done." Like,
Mhm.
you've healed. Time has come and passed, and you're like, "Wait, no, yeah,
Yeah.
not
And time
quite."
is such a funny thing because
It
it's like
is.
it feels like an eternity. I don't really remember what my life was like or what I was like before Lily,
Yeah,
but it also feels like it just happened yesterday. Like it's just funny. I don't know. It feels
yeah.
so long and so short.
Time is like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that your grief was really feels still really really super painful. And yeah, I wonder if that kind of compartmentalization of just like I am working. I'm only thinking about work right now and then having these really kind of hard intense moments at night or on the weekends. That is yeah, that's interesting how it feels so raw still, so new
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I do feel like it has changed. Like it's ebbed and flowed
Yeah.
and changed. But I think to some extent it's just been important to me to like create those spaces where I allow myself to just like really feel it.
Feel it all.
Because I
Yeah.
notice if I go try to go a stretch without having those times, then the compartmentalizing doesn't work and I stop being able to function.
Yeah.
And it starts like just leaking out in all
Yeah.
the other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What are some things that have helped you though throughout just this last year? Like anything that has really stood out to you that has been integral for helping you kind of cope with different aspects of this process this last year?
Yeah. Um, I think probably the biggest thing for me has been therapy, has
Mm.
been really, really helpful for me. I was lucky to um, get a therapist who specializes in like reproductive mental health and
Oh,
perinatal loss. Very early on, I actually had like set up an appointment with her while I was still pregnant because I knew things were complicated and that I was probably going
yeah.
to need help one way or another. So actually, my very first appointment with her was scheduled on the day that we found out Lily died. So I
Oh,
didn't do that appointment, but I
yeah.
was able to get in with her like the next week and have pretty much seen her weekly for the last year.
That's amazing.
And that has been so, so helpful. Other things we've also, both Chris and I have found a lot of support in going to support groups.
Mm.
That has been helpful. And due to COVID, they've all been virtual, which honestly probably was the only way that I ever started going. I feel like I would have been
Yeah.
too intimidated. And especially early, we started doing that pretty early too. And I was such a mess. Like I just sobbed through the whole things, which is it's a group of people that understand that it's okay to sob through the whole
Yeah.
things, but I think I would have been just like too overwhelmed to go do that in person.
Yeah.
But I could do it from my house where I could mute my microphone and turn off my camera if I felt really uncomfortable. And so those have been really helpful for us too.
That's awesome.
Um,
So both you and Chris would attend kind of together, like in a sense. Yeah. Sit
yep,
next to each other and
yep,
okay.
yeah. So that's been really good. And I think it's allowed us to, I mean, I should say more than therapy, Chris has been my biggest support, but I think that us each being in individual therapy and then going to support groups has really like given us a way to talk about it in a way that is like healing for both of us and like
Right.
gives us the language to
Yeah.
talk about things or like someone will say something and then afterwards I'll say no, I really related to that or I feel really differently than that in this way. And since we're both doing it, I feel like we've both been able to relate on that and have meaningful conversations.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the idea of having kind of the shared language because sometimes, yeah, you do go to a therapist and you're like, I talked about this thing and you try and break it down. They're like, what? So I think that's
Yeah.
great. That you guys have been able to kind of bond over that. Well, so you've already alluded that Chris went back to work. I mean, rather quickly. I mean, and
Mhm.
you did as well. But what differences have you seen between the two of you and how you've processed and mourned and grieved?
We definitely have been different. We were actually just recently talking about that. I don't know if we've been quite as different as I know some couples
Yeah.
are, which I think can be really challenging and really beautiful. Like it just is what it is. There's no right or wrong way to
Right.
grieve. But I think I've heard from people that it does create a lot of additional challenges when you just aren't processing in the same way. But I definitely think I have like been much more external in expressing my grief. I cry much, much more than Chris. And I like want to, I don't tend to be an external processor in general, but in my grief, I have wanted to talk to him about a lot of things. And he has been a gracious listener throughout, but doesn't always, he's not as external in his processing of things. So we've been different in that way. And I think it took him a while to, I think that difference was more stark in the beginning. And
Yeah.
like, even like, I wanted to go to therapy right away, and I was lucky that I had gotten it set up, but I kept suggesting it to him that
Mhm.
like, oh, it's so helpful to me. Like, I really think you should try to go. And he just wasn't ready. He wasn't opposed to therapy. He
Yeah.
just was like, I don't think I'm there. And then I don't know, 4 or 5 months in, he decided he wanted to and has found it very helpful too. But I don't think he was at a place early on where it
Earlier.
would have been as useful. And so I think we were just like a lot more different in how we were processing things
Yeah.
early on.
But not a bad thing, and it seems like you
Yeah.
were very open to how he was doing it. It sounds like he was very open and supportive of how you were going through it too. Because
Yeah.
that's one thing I've noticed. I was like, the people that argue and fall apart are the ones that don't think they're like, why aren't you crying like me?"
Yeah.
It's so easy to, yeah, feel like you should be the same in your grief, so
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like at some points, I feel like we've made a little bit of a joke about it.
Oh,
Of
really?
just like, oh, I cried again. You want to hear something new? Like I cried today. Like, so I feel like that's like, I don't know. We've been able to like make
Yeah.
light of it, but he's also been sensitive to like not make fun of me too much, because
Yes.
I will reach a point where I'm like, hey,
Stop
I'm
stop
just
it.
sad.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. Um, so I'm curious because, if you listen to, if you listen to Michelle's birth story of Lily, you know that at, around 20 weeks, you kinda had maybe there was, the thought that this, like, everything was not great. Like, it was a little worrisome. There's possible growth restriction, and then, like, as you went on in your appointments, it was kind of like, "Yeah, it's not looking good," and it's so, did you have some sort of were you kind of having kind of like an anticipatory grief? Like, were you kind of preparing your brain for that, your body for that? And how did that look as you were going along? Or were you really still super, super hopeful that things were gonna be okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't have at the time characterized myself as hopeful. Like I didn't feel super hopeful. I felt super anxious, but
Mm,
I think I probably was hopeful in that we knew that stillbirth was a very real possibility, and we knew that would be horrible, but I feel like we more prepared, even as much we didn't even do a lot, but like for the possibility of the NICU. But it was so uncertain that we would even get to the NICU that I was hesitant to even like prepare for the NICU. Like I did a little bit of like researching like how to prepare to be a NICU mom and things like that. But it was like my mind couldn't totally be open to either possibility. So I just feel like I was just kind of shut down and trying to survive until we got to the day when we would find out an answer of which path we
yeah,
would be headed down.
right. I know it's hard to Ugh. Went to the hospital sorry, you went and, had your ultrasound and you found out there, and then you guys opted not to go home.
Yeah.
Would you have done that differently now that you like, looking back on it? I'm just kinda curious
Yeah.
because some people I'm not saying that you have regrets or anything, but, like, because like, some people, like, prepare. They're like, they go look up stuff, they go get a onesie, they go get books to read so that they can prepare for the stillbirth experience while they're at the hospital. Would do you think that would have looked a little different for you?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that it was the right decision for us. And I think, I mean, I spoke about our experience with a bereavement doula. I feel like if we hadn't had her to help us kind of process through some of those things in the moment, then I might look back and wish that we had taken the time to prepare. But I
Yeah.
feel like she kind of took some of the, and like she ran out and got us books and got
Yeah.
us the terrible towel. Like she did those things. And so I feel like it makes it easier for me not to wish I had prepared. But I think if we hadn't had her, then I probably would have wished that we had gone home to
Yeah.
like take a little time and yeah, and think about how
Yeah.
we wanted it to look.
And I just when you told me that they had that service, I think it's so cool. They have bereavement doulas as a kind of a volunteer service. And I like the fact that she did so much for you is like it was awesome just to hear all that she did for you. So good
Yeah.
work, her.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah. It's really awesome. We feel really lucky.
Yeah. So Michelle, when you I'm kind of curious about how you remember Lily. Like, is there anything that you do? Like, do you have any physical mementos or any rituals that you do to kind of remember her? And then also, I mean, you just celebrated her birthday in a sense, and I kind of want to know about that. Did you guys do anything specific for her birthday?
So in general, things that we do. So again, it was not why we named her Lily, but it has been very nice that her name is the name of a flower.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very convenient. So we always have lilies around. Like every
Oh,
week we grocery shop at Trader Joe's and they have a great cheap flower section. And
yeah,
so we buy lilies every week. And so we always have those around and it's just really nice. And it feels really nice to pick out which lilies we're going to get. And it's just like kind of a ritual that we both look forward to every week
oh,
of and watching them bloom. And then we started very early on, kind of like lighting a candle for her. And we have a little spot on the mantle in our living room where we have a couple pictures of her and we have a candle there that we light a lot. Not every single day, but certainly on any special day.
yeah,
And it's just that's been a nice ritual to remember her. And then for her birthday last week, we felt I guess I'll just speak for myself. I felt a lot of pressure of like I want this day to be meaningful and I want it to be honoring to her and that was stressful. And
yeah,
I know that I've heard from enough women who have walked this road ahead of me. Like, I heard lots of good advice. Like, it doesn't have to look the same thing every year. You don't, any traditions you create this year don't have to be lifelong traditions, or if you, and like vice versa, like you can start something next year if you're like, that sounds like a good idea, but sounds like a little bit too much.
yeah,
But even still, it's still hard not to put that pressure on a little bit. But some things we ended up doing for her birthday, we both were able to take the day off work, which was really nice.
oh, good, okay,
So we were home together and Chris had the idea to get like one of those like garden stone kits where you can
oh,
like create the little mosaics. Like, I mean, it's like a children's craft.
yeah, yeah.
But we ordered one of those and we made it together thinking it was going to look like a kindergartner made it, but it actually turned out pretty nice.
Oh, good.
And one of the things Chris has done a lot this summer that I will not take credit for is like he's really tended to our garden and we planted a lot of lilies and other flowers. And so like our garden kind of feels like a space for her. And so now that stone is in the garden that we made on her birthday, which is really nice. I made her a cake, which was fun.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge baker, so I was like, if this turns out badly, am I gonna feel like a failure? But it turned out pretty good. And that was good. So it was nice to have some things to like do with our hands. And then we took some of the cake out to the cemetery
Oh,
um,
good.
to visit her. And we created a photo book that we of all the photos we had from the hospital, we had been working on a photo book for a long time, but it was just very emotionally
So hard.
um hard to put together. Yeah. So we just weren't making super fast progress, but we had this summer like decided that we wanted it to be done by her birthday. And
Mhm.
so we like opened it on her birthday and got to look through that, which was really nice.
Oh, good.
Um, and then we later on in the weekend, we had a couple of my friends come over to like eat her birthday cake. And it was just nice. It was nothing like fancy at all. Just like some of my friends that have been really, really supportive, the same friends that, bought me diapers.
Yes, exactly.
So they came over and we looked at, so I didn't even realize because I just like forget who's seen what, but they hadn't seen some of her like mementos, like the blankets and hats and things from the hospital, um and they hadn't even seen all the photos. So it was nice to like kind of look through those things with them and remember her. And then we did similar with Chris's family the next day. We like hadn't planned anything. We just were so not sure if we would want to be around people at all. So it was all super last minute. Like we didn't like his family, we literally called them the night before and it's like, if anyone's free tomorrow, we're gonna like order pizzas. And
Oh,
yeah. And then one other thing I guess we did, which we started this, we did it for her due date. So her due date was December 8th, so 3 months to the day after she was born. That felt like a very significant day last year. And so last year on that day we had asked, or we had sent out, we on Amazon we ordered a bunch of lily scented candles to a bunch of our loved ones, and then asked even more people to just light a candle for her and send us a picture.
oh,
And that was really special. And so we ended up doing the same thing. We didn't send new candles,
yep.
but we just asked people to light candles for her and to send them to us. And so it was just really nice both of those times and throughout the year, because we said like anytime you want to light a candle for her, let us know. And so it's
Oh,
so special to get a picture of a candle, and just know that people are thinking of our girl.
yeah. It really makes a huge difference when you're like, "Oh, somebody thought of my baby. He's
Yeah.
not here." So, yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
You have mentioned, a few times of some really amazing friends that came and basically took care of you. What were some other ways, I mean, besides them purchasing diapers for you,
Yeah.
what were some other ways that, they helped and other ways that I mean, ways that you asked for help too? Because, it's hard to ask for help, and so I'm wondering how you did that. What was some things that you could give advice for other parents that are maybe going through loss to ask for help? Because you can't do it on your own, I feel
Yeah.
like. You just
Yeah.
can't.
It's so hard. Yeah. So one of the things which I guess was a combination of a response to what people were offering to help and also asking for help, we did create a meal train.
Oh, okay.
And that was so helpful. I remember before losing Lily, like I had been a part of meal trains and I always just thought they were kind of silly and just like a thing that people do so they feel like they're doing something. And now I mean, at least for us, I know everyone's experience is different. It was so helpful.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how we just wouldn't have eaten.
Yeah.
So we got tons of food. We got tons of gift cards for like Grubhub
Oh.
and stuff. And so she was born on September 8th. The first time we cooked any sort of food for ourselves was Halloween. So it was
Oh,
like months.
so kind, so
Yeah,
kind.
and it really made a huge difference. So that was great. And then one other thing, which this was my therapist's idea very early on, that was super helpful that I would recommend is, she recommended that I designate someone as like my quote unquote PR person. Because it
Oh.
came from, she was like, does everyone who you want to know about Lily, do they know? And I was like, no, because I get so overwhelmed just thinking about telling people and like texting people and like that. It's just like that's so emotionally taxing, but I wanted people to know and I didn't want it to be like a huge hush hush thing.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't in a place to do it. And so I asked one of my good friends if I was like, "Are you willing to do this? Are you willing to reach out to people for me?" And she said yes. And I kind of said roughly what I wanted her to say, and then she like drafted a text that she was going to send people and had me just look at it, but rather than like having to come up with the words myself. And like that way too, like people were reaching out to her to ask how to support me rather
Yeah.
than directly to me all the time, which was really nice. So that was really, really helpful, just
I
to like
like
get the word out.
my mind is blown. Like you just blew my your therapist just blew my mind. Holy cow, because I was like, "Oh, I guess I kinda had that in the early like just in the first little bit when I had a couple of good friends that would kind of field the questions, but it would have been nice to designate somebody that was
Yeah.
willing to and then be the kind of the point person. That is brilliant. Okay,
Yeah,
somebody ever
and it gave me like an I mean, and that's like not really a thing. Like she's relieved of her PR duties now, but like
Yes.
even like it was nice for me to be able to like, can I would literally just text her be like, I have a PR duty task. Are you in a place to do it? And it just like kind of opened up like a way for me to ask for it in a way that felt a little bit less overwhelming.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
Oh,
helpful.
that's so, so good. I love that so much because you like, I don't know about you, but we got so many text messages and emails and direct messages that it was overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I felt so guilty to not be able to respond to everybody. And so
Yeah.
I just think
And
that,
yeah, and just to respond to them, like even when I wanted to and I knew I was choosing to, I wasn't necessarily like I did feel guilty as well, but I wasn't necessarily responding out of guilt when I was, but then I would just fall apart. Like just like
yeah,
articulating the words even by text message just like was so painful.
yeah,
So and yeah, it allowed us to be able to get support from people without us having to do all the work of reaching out when I knew there were people that would want to support us. Like we feel lucky
completely.
that we have a good community, but it's so much when you're in that early grief. It's so much to be able to ask people.
Yeah. Yes. That is completely, that's so, so true. I love your therapist. I'm liking her a lot. Is there any other things because you said that you have gone to individual therapy and then the support groups. Have you guys gone to couples therapy
We
together?
haven't.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about it, but we haven't at this
Okay.
point. Yeah.
Okay, so well then are there any other things that your therapist has said or taught you or anything that you had some aha moments through this grief process that have really like, oh wow, that's really shifted my thinking and helped me?
Feel like probably so many. I feel like
Mhm.
some of my friends are probably so sick of being like, "Well, my therapist said." I'm like, I feel like it's been really validating. She's been really good about validating me as a mom and
Yeah.
like validating seeing me as a good mom, which is just so hard when people don't they don't like I don't have a baby in my arms. So people don't identify me as a mom and that's so painful. And so like that's been a very healing part of therapy.
Yeah.
And then I had a immense amount of guilt and regret and questioning around the decisions we had to make for Lily
Yes.
and like been able to work through it in a way and just like I think she's just made me realize that there's no way of knowing and that's so uncomfortable. I want to know. I want to whether that's I want to know that I made the wrong decision or that I made the right decision. I just want to know
Right.
and I wouldn't say I'm comfortable with it, but I'm more comfortable with the unknowing at this point. And that's come through a lot of
Oh,
therapy, of just like really wrestling with that guilt that I feel that if I had done something different, everything might be different. And yeah, if I had approached decision making different, like I've just questioned every single part of it 100 times. And so really working through that has been critical for me to be able to
feel
heal it all.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nobody ever wants to be in that position, but yeah.
Yeah.
I found that when we lost our son that it was a really like a lot of my perspective changed about my life. Like you have those kind of turning points, and so I felt like I had a new yeah, like I just had a new lease on life. It was a very different perspective, and I'm wondering if after Lily was born and you lost her, do you feel like you have a different perspective or anything that changed or switched for you?
I definitely feel like a totally different person. It's funny when people ask me like why I made such and such like career decisions or like any decisions that
Yeah.
I made before Lily, I can't even like access it. I'm like,
Y
I don't know because the
yeah.
way that I approached every life feels so foreign.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of like I feel like it's kind of cliche, but I feel like a lot of like little things I just like don't care about. Um I Yeah, I mean, and that's not to say that I don't get like I also feel like sometimes in my grief and anxiety and think like I also then get worked up about like very silly things. And then I'm like, how am I worked up about this right now? My
Yeah.
daughter died. Like, how am I worrying about something so stupid? But in general, I just like don't care as much about little things. And I think it's really changed how I approach my goals
Mm.
in my life. It's changed some of my professional goals and really made me like obviously I wanted to be a mom. We were like Lily was very much wanted from the very beginning. But I think I had a lot of trepidation about like how is this going to impact my life? How am I going to
Yeah.
actually like fit becoming a mom into my life? And now like family just like feels so much more important than
Yeah.
before, and it just feels like a total I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on young professional women to like prioritize their career ahead of it, and it
Yeah.
like makes you a bad professional if you say that you want to prioritize your family, and I've just stopped caring about that
Yeah.
because you just don't get to control things, and obviously we have learned that
Yeah.
life is precious and short. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely changed a lot of my perspectives on making like career decisions and things like that.
Yeah. So, Michelle, you did mention in your birth episode that you are currently pregnant. Do we want to
Yeah.
go there? Do we want to go there?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, okay, good. It was one of those things where I'm like, I better just double check. So you mentioned that you are pregnant, and I, and you're about 20 weeks, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, right?
Yep. 21. Yep.
How are you feeling?
Physically I feel okay. It's definitely been a little bit of a rockier pregnancy physically than it was with Lily. I just
Mhm.
had more nausea and things, not horrible by any stretch, but much different.
Yeah,
And but emotionally it's just been really challenging from the very beginning. But yeah, it's the anxiety is
yeah,
high. Fortunately, like things are looking better. We've had our anatomy scan. This baby is growing very well, which is amazing news. But it's hard to trust that, and I feel like even if we had only ever heard our story of loss, I think I wouldn't fully trust in the future and trust that like
right.
I have no reason to trust that a pregnancy means a living baby. That has
Yeah,
not been my experience. And in many ways it feels like I've been pregnant for 2 years and I don't have a living
yeah,
baby, so it just feels like a permanent state of being.
yeah,
Um and I mean, we had 7 months before we got pregnant again, but uh being hearing other people's stories like through this podcast and through other podcasts and through support groups has been so important for my grief and not feeling so alone. But it also means I am very acutely aware of all of the horrible ways that bad things can happen.
yeah.
And and they're not abstract. Like it's not like
Mm,
statistics on a sheet. It's like I have seen people's lives wrecked by all of these different ways. And so it's hard to trust. Even when I'm like, okay, so the things that went wrong with Lily's pregnancy seem to not be happening right now. They could
Right.
still happen later, which would be less bad in theory. But it's like, but also I just know deep in my soul that bad things happen to babies that don't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you doing anything to quell some of that anxiety during this time? I obviously you're going to your therapist.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Um,
regularly. Anything else that you're trying to help with that? Because I'll tell you right now, like having my baby after we lost our son, it was like I felt like I was hold. I've said this before. I felt like I was holding my breath the entire 9 months. I was
yeah.
like, this is too much. I can't. I can't deal
Yeah.
with this.
I would say I don't know if I'm handling my anxiety well. Being honest. I'm not doing the best at it, but I do notice if I like try to be physically active, that helps just like get rid
Mm,
of nervous energy. I'm
yeah,
not always
yeah,
the best at that. And we also are going to a support group that's specific for pregnancy after loss,
yeah.
which is also helpful. Yeah, I would say like that does probably concretely help with my anxiety. But yeah, it's hard. I
It's
don't know. If you have the answers, I would love them.
I don't have the answers. I really was, like, very anxious the entire
Yeah,
time, and so but I we hope all the best for this little guy, so,
thank you.
um, Michelle, is thank you again for the time that you've given us today, and I wanted to see if there was any last little bit of advice that you'd like to share with our audience and anything that would maybe comfort somebody that is looking for some comfort right now.
I don't know if it's really comfort, but I do feel like one of the things that the feelings that has been the hardest is just how lonely and isolating grief can feel. And so I think to a grieving mom, I would just say that you're not alone and also validate that I know that it feels like you're 100% alone. And like that just sucks. I don't know. That's not really any comfort, but it just, I don't know. I feel like at times I would have benefited from hearing that. So
Yeah. That's perfect. Thank you again so, so much.
thank you. Thank you so much for all the work that you and Lee put into this. It has been helpful for me. And I know it's helpful for so many other people.
We hope so. And I really like your lilies in the background, by the way.
Oh,
I just
thank you. Had to sneak them in there.
Yeah, exactly.